This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
Hey, welcome back, Tom Anderson Show. It's a delight always to have Assemblymember John Weddleton, who's doing a very good job in tough times for all of us in Anchorage, municipality of Anchorage. Last night, John, second assembly meeting, and then I read today that, are you going to really, truly have another one this evening?
We have another meeting scheduled, 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock today. Continue the
Lord.
public hearing on the...
Oh, man. Okay. I don't know. I just read that, and I thought that can't be right. Weddleton's like, it is right. Well, you don't have to go play-by-play this. That we were talking about sports and play-by-plays. You don't have to do that, but if you could kind of give us an overview. I mean, last night was the second night. What's the, for those who are on Mars or clueless or not following it, maybe someone in Matsu isn't as interested. You're going to be, because we're going to touch on it here. What's the problem? Is it that people, La France has a ordinance that is mandating masks, and if that's the case, mandating at what level?
Well, no, actually,
or not,
it is
Zolotel.
Meg Zolotel and Pete Peterson put one forward, and that's an important distinction. You know, people say, oh, the Assembly is doing X, and, you know, in any case, it's not really how it works. You know, one or two Assembly members can bring anything forward, and then we all sort of own it, and we deal with it. And the motive for it, I mean, you know, they could speak for themselves, but it's been pretty clear. You know, we've gone from, you know, one of the lowest, you know, COVID rates, you know, 3 months or so ago to, you know, notoriously the highest in the country, and even worldwide, you know, the rate of COVID infection is quite high. So it's noticeable. We're getting lots of calls, do something. So, you know, they responded with, you know, potentially a mask mandate. So with any ordinance like this, we have public hearings. We want to hear from people. And it's worthwhile. You know, we hear there's a lot of anger. There's some very calm, thoughtful people. You get the whole spectrum. But, you know, I think in anything that we do, I like to go in eyes wide open. You know, what is the upside? What's the downside? And people are really making, you know, some good cases. You know, they have trouble wearing masks. The problems with them are even philosophical. You know, it's just they want the freedom to choose. I mean, one woman had a nice poetic "my face, my space," you know, and that's fair to think of. You know, it's, you know, mask is fairly intrusive, you know. So anyway, you know, they're long public hearings. You know, we've heard from a couple hundred people probably by now, and we'll hear from more this evening. And it's, you know, it's time consuming, but I find it fairly worthwhile. But the mask,
it's something for people to. Well, it's something for people to consider. You're always glasses half full, which is one of the reasons I'm honored that you come on our show and rap about what's happening in the Assembly. But what you just talked about is one of the reasons I thank God every day I'm not on the school board anymore. Because I was a legislator, was on the school board, I was zoning board, parking authority. I served a lot in my 30s and 40s. Now I'm in my 50s and in the Matsu, so I can't certainly there. I would if I could, but I will tell you I didn't enjoy the school board. No offense to anybody on the school board, because it was very time consuming, not even remotely like what you're going through. And I'm not saying I don't work. I work 12 hours a day at my day job with Optima, but I mean it was time consuming in areas, wonky bureaucratic things I didn't have an affinity towards. The reason I'm bringing this up, my point is that you just brought up the fact that you, and happily you're doing it, and diligently and vigilantly you're serving on the Assembly. But for those of you that want to run, keep that in mind, what Weddleton just said, Mr. Weddleton, that there is a lot of work at times, and you got to be engaged, and my words, not his. I hope that you find it of value and listen and learn like you are doing, John, because that's so important. Is that a fair comment? Because some people want to run, and it's like that's maybe the environment you'll be in. You got to sit there, hopefully patiently, thoughtfully listening to both sides, day after day in some examples.
Well, you know, I think that is fair. You know, if people are thinking of running, you know, I'd always said, you know, consider it as a job. You know, it's a huge amount of work, and I enjoy it. I think it's very fulfilling and important. But, you know, it's, you know, when people see a 2 or 3 page ordinance, you know, on our agenda, that could be 100 hours of work to get to a point where it's, you know, put in front of the world to discuss. And, you know, it's just a lot of background work to do the job well. And that's
and you get a few bucks a day for it, so it's not like you're doing it for the income. Well, what happens? No, for sure. So Zolotel Peterson? So they're the culprits, or they're the heroes, depending on what vantage point you're looking at this and concluding on it. But what are the next steps? Maybe play out a hypothetical. So you have the not hypothetical. You have the hearing tonight at 6 continuing. Let's say it at some point they're like, okay, public hearing's done. Will there be a vote? And then what happens if it does get approved?
Well, there's actually a really important step in the end of the public hearing and a vote, and that is amendments. And we already have I think 11 proposed, and I think about half of those are from me, and more will come. You listen to people speaking and say, okay, well, that's a good point, and we text real quick our attorney and say, hey, write up an amendment to make that happen. So there will be, I fairly expect, because a number of people have asked for an amendment so that people actively participating in sports don't have to wear a mask, because we want people to be healthy and do those healthy things. And a mask is definitely a bummer, if you're trying to run, or play basketball or whatever it is. And so I expect that'll be toned down. I look for not just case rates and so on as the trigger for these things, but I voted against mask mandates last year because I just look at medical system capacity, and we always had it last year. It was close, but they always run it close, and we always had some elbow room. But right now we very clearly don't, and that's a trigger for me to say we have to do something. What is of course the question, but we are so far beyond where we were last year. So I've got an amendment to, instead of tying it to case rates, tying it to medical system capacity. So when we show we've had capacity for a week, then it would end. And then the current version has the end date, the end of the year, and I've got an amendment to make it end of October. And we could extend it. But, we heard from Dr. Tom Hennessy yesterday, and he said, you should be able to see a difference within 3 weeks if there's going to be effect of the mask mandate. So if we push it out for a month, we should have seen some change. And if we didn't, then maybe we should stop because it's not working. And if we did, well, good job. Let's end it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there'll be a lot of amendments. It'll look very. And then the idea of where it had a section that was added that how people could take action against other citizens who didn't follow it. I think about 5 people put in amendments say delete that. So I don't see that surviving at all. That was ill-considered. So ultimately, I think this will be mask mandate light. It's in its words fairly light. It's only indoors, big sports events. I think there's some amendments that pull that out so you don't have to mask up outdoors. And then it won't be enforced. I mean, we know the mayor won't. So if it passes, and it's likely to, we'll see, but in some form, the mayor, I'm sure, will veto it, and I expect this 8 votes for an override. I would expect that would be overridden if he vetoed it. So then we'd have a light mask mandate unenforced, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Well, John Weddleton, I appreciate the fact that you're engaged in this. You know what I'm going to do, Tom? If you could preserve this clip, we'll make a YouTube video out of it and put it on Alaska Politics and Elections so people understand what's up. It'll have a shelf life because after this is voted on, then it's old news. But I think it's instructive to other cities. And I know that you yourself have traveled to other cities for business reasons and for public policy reasons to listen, to learn homelessness, mandates, lack of mandates, and so keep up the good work. John Weddleton will be thinking of you and your colleagues tonight and hope that you can get through it unscathed, okay?
Well, that's our job. I mean, it's, looks bad, but that's what we do.
Absolutely. Well, keep up the good work, my friend. Assemblyman John Weddleton, always a pleasure to hear from you.
Thanks, Tom.
You betcha. Hey, folks, it's the Tom Anderson Show.